Okay. Hi, you guys. Well, hi, Desiree. Hello, hello. Welcome back to our live
Hello.
sessions with Siri. We're going to get started on this fourth episode. episode. And I'm going to begin going over recapping some of our previous weekly exercises. Is there anything else I wanted to say to you guys? I don't think so. Okay. Let's see if we can see this all pretty well. It's a little dark today because of the rain, but all right. So we're going to start with gesture. That was week 1, gesture. This is how I begin all of my drawings from life, trying to identify those main actions, those main axis lines of movement. All right, Siri, ready? And these will be about 30 seconds long. See, you can see, okay. And begin. So I'm trying to simplify and find those lyrical movements. Sort of sculpting Siri out of wire, ribbon, trying to find really graceful movements. You'll see that contrasted with our exercise today. All right, and switch. Starting with one main axis line, right? Usually I'm always looking towards the spine, going down to a limb that I feel the pose is guided by. And then after I get some of those big curvaceous gesture lines, I could go in and start building up a little volume with the same rhythms. All right, and switch. One main axis of movement line. Trying to identify graceful, curvaceous movements. And switch. Beautiful. Main axis of movement, trying to find those movements. Then you can see I kind of gravitate towards filling out volume with my pelvic region, thinking about some of those S curves, but just trying to really get this very loopy, noodly quality, right? You'll see again, we're doing something I call the hard line exercise today. It's going to contrast greatly. So for this exercise, loops, swirls, curvaceous, serpentine movements. All right? And switch. Beautiful. If you get these dynamic platforms nailed down, all of your beautiful musculature, modeling, observational details will feel much more real, much more dynamic, much more full of life. All right, switch. And you can see, how you might be able to find some subjects. I used to do gestures a lot on the bus when people don't really know what it is you're doing. The grocery store, the park, again, if you're fortunate enough to have family members willing to do some gestures for you, that'd be great, or you could just draw them on their day-to-day activities. Pets, I think cats are so graceful. If you have a feline friend at home, they're wonderful gesture models, cats. All right, and switch. You always want to think about, though, that central line, no matter what your subject is, that central line. Always think of the spine. Beautiful little flip to that foot, right? So these are like scribbles, wires. We're just trying to get better at identifying lines like this. I'll do one more and then we'll go on to silhouette. All right, and switch, Siri. Beautiful. So you'll see I'll always start with one line to try and capture that pose. All right, thank you, Siri. Just hang out for 1 second. Okay, so again, you guys, those were gestures. That's what we do. That's how I start every drawing. Again, if you fast forward through any of my longer demos at the end, you can see I start with gesture and then I move on to big value shapes, So an exercise I share with you guys in this regard is our second, what we learned on our second session with Siri, the silhouette exercise. And this is just about growing your skills to assess like comparative volumes. So we're eliminating details, we're even basically eliminating edges because these are just really fuzzy. And we're just focusing on comparative volumes. How big is the head to the rib cage? How big is the thigh to the waist, et cetera, just comparing all these volumes. All right, Siri. And remember, I pinch my charcoal like this to get a nice, flat wash of value. All right, and begin. So in these exercises, I'm starting with the largest volume. And they're just kind of fuzzy silhouette people, but I just want to start to get better at feeling, comparative volumes, especially in active poses. Can you see? Alrighty, and switch. Beautiful. So while I'm starting with the biggest volumes I see, I'm not letting myself get too distracted by outlines or edges. And I'm trying to just get better at kind of this shape compared to this shape, compared to this shape. This leg maybe is like this arm, et cetera, et cetera. All right, and switch.
Hey, Miss Stasko, your mic is muted.
Oh my gosh, you guys probably didn't hear any of that, huh?
Oh no, it just muted for some reason, like a few seconds ago.
Huh, oh weird. Well, okay, thank you, Mike. If that ever happens again, let me know, you guys. How strange. Um, okay, so we got gesture down, a little recap on gesture. We have a little bit of recap on the silhouette exercise. Go again and watch those full videos for full explanations. What we did last week was focusing on contour. You know, people have mixed feelings about contour. I think a lot of them are usually kind of exasperated feelings because it's a study that maybe you don't get a lot of finished product out of. Certainly you're not going to keep any beautiful blind contour studies. But just to practice is like, playing a musical instrument. So when you have your concert, your concert will be even better. You just want to start identifying human line and contour. So again, I'll pick any point on Siri. Let's try that medial line. And just with sincerity, or how about a line you guys can actually see? That, yeah, yeah, I'll do your hand, perfect. So I'm gonna be looking at that top contour of Siri's wrist. And I'm just going, or her forearm, I should say. And I'm intensely, really intensely concentrating and imagining my charcoal point is that little bug or that little skiing man. And I'm just giving myself an opportunity for very sincere, intense study. You'll be surprised the nature of line in a human body. It might not be something that you immediately thought. Like I get a lot of people who will always draw feet and ankles like this, but really the contour of a leg ends something like that. So getting more familiar with the language of contours within a human body, I think is a great start. All right, that's what I'm gonna do. So I was doing that line without looking. I just looked back at my page to reorient myself because I found a natural breaking point in the contour. All right. And now I'm not looking at my page and moving back down. And that's why I was suggesting hands. Hands and feet are great subjects for contour exercises. We always want to get better at hands and feet. Hands and feet. Hands and feet. And there are a lot of subtleties in them. All right, a natural breaking point on that wrist. Okay, kind of handish, but not perfect. Okay. So it's just about really slowing down. A lot of the stuff we do in the beginning is fast. You can do the breaking, sir. A lot of stuff we do in the beginning is fast, and the contour exercise is just about slowing down and really studying line. So any subject you can find will do. Remember, we talked about cross contours as being very helpful. This little avocado guy. So cross contour. And we talked about looking for the medial line. I think one of the very most helpful contours is looking for that medial line in relation to a skull is super helpful. In relationship to the torso is super helpful when you're trying to identify how much information is on either side of that medial line. So take some time deciphering your subjects and picking ones that you think you're actually going to get a lot out of. Alrighty, so let's move on. You can see some remnants of our exercise. Let's move on for our exercise for today, our makeup day. You'll see me maybe when I'm drawing. You haven't noticed already. This is something I use all the time in figure drawing. This is what I call my hard line exercise. Just like in gestures, how we're trying to kind of abbreviate and simplify something more fluid. In this hard line exercise, we're trying to do the opposite. And I like to think of Siri as like a piece of wood. So I'm looking for all of those big blocks, and I'm going to try and draw Siri without any curves and just big straight line blocks. You'll see what I mean in just a minute. But the very first thing I think about in these hardline exercises, let's see if we can see this, is the skeleton. From our Robert Beverly Hale videos, you guys got a little bit of taste of skeletal anatomy. And actually, Siri, I'll probably start my lecture now, or start talking about skeletal systems, so you can hang out, whatever. Sorry about that. I think we'll just go right on into it. In this hardline exercise, I think of the skeletal system to start out with, because it's just an easy building block. So let's draw a little abbreviated skeleton that I'm looking for in these exercises. And there's four. Can you see that? Okay. There's four parts to the skull that we talk about mostly in this class. The frontal bone being the forehead. We look for zygomatic arches, which are the eye sockets. This is my zygomatic arch. We look for just the top teeth. It's called the maxilla. And the lower teeth is the mandible. So fairly simple. Just remember those frontal parts of the skull. And then if we just draw a straight line, we'll think of that as our spine. So our spine has 33 vertebrates. We have the first 7 is our cervical vertebrae. The next 12 is our thoracic vertebrae. We have 12 thoracic vertebrae because we have 12 sets of ribs, so 1 vertebrae for each rib. And then we have 5 lumbar vertebrae, which you guys know is when your lower back hurts, or maybe not yet, but we have 5 lumbar vertebrae. And all of these vertebrae are flexible. When we get down, let's see. Hold on, I'm going to grab Mr. Skeleton. There you go. All right. So here's those, all the way up. Our first 7 vertebrae are 7 cervical vertebrae. Our next 12 vertebrae for our 12 ribs are 5 lumbar vertebrae. We have fused vertebrae in our sacrum, this funny looking bone right here, and then the remnants of our tailbone, our coccyx. So the first 24 are flexible. There we go. And again, we're just doing an abbreviated skeleton here. So let's give him, really when I'm drawing this, I'm just looking for these 2 points on our hips right here. You see? So these parts of your hip bone that stick out, those are the anterior superior of our iliac spine. This is our iliac crest, our iliac part of our pelvic bone, our iliac wings. But when I'm drawing these hardline exercises, I'm really just abbreviating those 2 bone points kind of with a straight line. But really, you can imagine that's kind of an abbreviation of our pelvic bone. It looks a bit like a butterfly, very beautiful. All right, let's just so in this hardline exercise, I'm looking at the rib cage, and I simplify it with a V. Kind of flares out. Probably a little higher. So let's go down to the legs and we'll jump back up to the arms. So then we have our largest limb bones, our femur. On our femur, there's some important landmarks. Let's see, get his arm out of the way. And there we go. So this is our femur bone, right? Our big leg bone. We have the head of the femur. It's like a ball and socket. It fits into our hip and rolls around. That's the part that a lot of people have to get make titanium hips when they get old. This is called our greater trochanter. And this little guy in here is our lesser trochanter, greater trochanter, lesser trochanter. But this is a protrusion that you'll often see, predominantly in female models. I mean, you will see that apex of form on the hip right here. All right. And then moving down, so there's two bones in here, our tibia and our fibia, just abbreviate. All right. You can see them down there, but in this exercise, I just kind of think of straight. And then we have like skeletal anatomy in our foot. We have what we call our tarsus, which are the kind of cluster. Let's see if I can bring this guy's foot up. There we go, look at that. We have what are called our tarsus right here. These are all these small little bones. And we have our metatarsus, which is the longer flattish part of your foot. And then our toes are called phalanges, but it's broken down into these three areas. We have similar anatomy, you might remember from the video, in our hand, our carpus, our metacarpus, and then our fingers are phalanges. Can we see? There we go. So very similar. And in this exercise, I still abbreviate the foot as a triangle, essentially. So back up here, we'll draw a reverse. We have similar skeletal structure. Humerus, you can always remember that. Oh, I hurt my funny bone. Then we have our radius and our ulna. Again, very similar, matching skeletal anatomy. But in this exercise, I will still simplify as one line. So I often think of the hand in very simple geometric ways as well. So this is sort of a skeletal system that I start with, and then I am, in this exercise, I'm again using this kind of pinching technique to get straight. And it's like I'm thinking of, like if this was kind of let's say that's like a really good drawing of a foot, or if that's what a foot looks like. Or the foot I am looking at. When I'm doing this exercise, I'm sort of thinking about this sort of geometric lasso around things. I know that there are softer curves. I know they exist, but it's like I'm trying to make form out of wood. I think of it like wood, and then I'm going to whittle away some of the curves. So on our little skeleton man, you can see I go like this, right? But we know legs aren't sharp like that. In reality, I'm probably seeing a soft curve, a soft curve, a soft curve of some kind. But being able to identify like this angle is very, very helpful, especially in relation to a horizontal, right? How many, is it maybe 45 degrees, right? This hip line in relation to a horizontal. How about this line? Maybe to a vertical, that's 15 degrees, right? We all know 45 degrees, 45 degrees, 90 degrees. So really being able to assess degrees in a drawing is very helpful. So I use hard lines. It's incredibly helpful for a foot. I use hard lines for feet all the time. But you'll see me, I use hard lines quite often, in addition to curvy lines, because it's a skill that's it's easy to kind of think you know what you're doing, but until you go and try it out, you'll be surprised at these straight edges. When we're drawing, can you see this? When we're drawing somebody in contrapposto, there's that medial line. Let's make your hand all the way up here. So you can see with really simple identifying shoulders and hips, identifying very simple hard lines within your figures is a great foundational tool. I'm always looking for these points in the hips, and I'm sorry, I kind of skipped ahead onto the shoulders, but the top of our rib cage, I'm always looking for our clavicle, our collarbone and how it relates to our shoulders. So let me show you guys on this skeleton again. Always look for these marks, right? Those are what you can see when a figure is nude. And I'll have Siri stand up and show you guys just a contrapposto. And then here's our clavicle as it relates to our shoulders. All right. Let me get Siri to stand in a contrapposto. I'll show you that, and then I'll start demoing this hard line exercise, okay? Let's see if you can see me and Siri. Okay, excellent. All right, hi guys. Okay, Siri, hit it down and then you lower this. There you go. All right, so we can feel that edge of her iliac crest and look at this diagonal and how far from this point of her hip all the way down to her ankle. Look at that diagonal. That heel really juts in to support her balance. Look at, so here's the line of her shoulders. Line of hips, line of shoulders, and then feeling that medial line. Okay? All right. And you can do this with anything. You know, you can do this with your dog, your cat, your friends, a plant, anything you can simplify into hard geometric forms, and then think about, you know, think about whittling it away. Think about, sometimes I overdraw in order to get the correct shape, and then I'll go back and whittle away. All right, so let's try some of these hard line exercises. I'm looking for the spine, and I'm looking for that collarbone and pelvic bone first. Here's some old students' hard line exercises. Thought there was a lot of paper in here. The blank one. All right. So some hard line exercises. Thinking about the spine, the skeletal system. All right, Siri, and ready? And begin. Anything is fine. Anything is fine. It doesn't have to be contrapposto. These take a little bit longer than gestures. They take a little longer, maybe like a minute. So I'm still trying to start with big forces, but now instead of the loopy forces, I'm trying to simplify into hard line forces. Those shoulders and that hip, center spine, the dominant leg, and then finding some hard line outer edges. All right, and switch here. Okay. So I guess I still start with the upper torso of the spine. Our symphysis pubis, our pretty much where the end of our pelvic bone is, again, is a good middle point. So if you need some guiding proportions, that's a good place to start. I find this hardline exercise is very helpful when working with female models. It's helpful to find this dynamic relationship of their waist to hip. It's one of the beautiful features of female anatomy. So this is a really hard line that you can look for. So you see, I always think these guys kind of look like Gumbies too. Change, all right, and switch. So thinking just kind of the generalized first bit of that spine, and then I guess, you know, coming to that point of the pelvic region is where I'm going on most of these. I'll simplify with just a line, remembering I was using that measuring stick to kind of delineate the whole nature of that leg. Working on my angles. Remember what I just said about degrees and angles. This is great for that. You'd be so surprised what you think and what you see when it comes to angles like this. Beautiful flatness. So I start these off pretty, really like Gumbies, not very detailed at all. But you can get pretty detailed even with hard lines. The idea is you're just sort of noticing other things about the figure. So noticing hard lines like this, in addition to noticing our lyrical, it's great for feet too, our lyrical movements is very helpful. And again, you'll see me often end with the head, right? I often end with the head because I find it's much easier to get the body on. So, right? Starting with a simple skeleton and then building out simplified, hard, easy lines. All right. Oh, beautiful one. Can we do that one? Okay. Really getting that protrusion of her rib cage. Here, I can think about the rib cage in this one. See, one hip up, one hip down. This is a great exercise too, to just really start paying attention to how weight is shifted over the hips. If you're finding your figures look stiff, I would suggest looking at the hips right on. Again, I said in that contour exercise, but there's some beautiful flatness in hips. A lot of it is with that greater trochanter. bone that we just looked at, that odd part of our femur head. Lots of triangles in this exercise, lots of triangles. Okay. All right, let's do one more. Or we'll do a couple of these. Sorry, guys, trying to find. Thought I had a good clean pad. Let's do one right here. Beautiful. So even if a pose is kind of curvaceous, you can still simplify and get those angles. So you see, I'm starting with that skeleton, very simply. Feel that rib cage. And it's helpful, like, see, I just made that angle too high. If I'm really holding myself accountable, I can go and correct that. All right, nice hard line. Oh, let's try another one. Hold on, bear with me 1 second. All right, still thinking about that big. This one is. Here. Went off the page for that one. Apologies, everybody. All right, and just take one little break, sorry. So you can see these are very exaggerated movements. You're still catching gesture, but in a hard line way. All right, give me 1 second while I grab a couple sheets of paper, you guys, so I don't have to deal with that cluster again. Just give me a little break. Do a couple more here. Oh, that was impressive. All right. Ready to do another? Okay, and begin. All right. Okay, beautiful, lovely. So torso, spine, there's a subtle shift in that hip, maybe a little more than subtle. Siri's got most of her weight on that one leg, but believe it or not, that little toe is helping to maintain her balance. It still does to everybody, but I always find it so fascinating how we're able to stay balanced on our tiny little legs, ankles. You can often see a protrusion of volume where that greater trochanter is and not where her iliac crest is. All right, and switch. So just sincere observation of the skeleton. Beautiful. If you guys are ever having drawing issues in whatever, let's say you are copying a photo, these strong lines are very helpful. See what you can do for vertical and horizontal comparisons. Neat. All right, and switch. All right, and switch. So these should feel very much like our gesture exercises, but with hard lines, right? Still looking for those big forces. Oh, here's a great one. Let's say I'm trying to draw this. I can really feel that whole big linear movement from her shoulder to her back heel. Noticing that hip, leg. This is really great for arms that are on a waist because you can really feel again this degree. What is that degree? And this is, again, just about breaking the figure down into simpler shapes while you're trying to get everything in its proper place and really whittling things away from a big chunk, a big hard line is very helpful. This is also like our silhouette exercise, right? When we're cleaning them up with our eraser in a way. But now we're focusing on the internal spine, but then we are focusing on edges, outer contours, and trying to identify some of these flats, in addition to all the curve. All right, let's do another one, Siri. Beautiful, challenging. I'm often coming up to the model and drawing sort of invisible threads for my students, invisible threads of movement. And that's what I'm looking for, right? I mean, how simple is this? That upper arm, her forearm, upper arm, her forearm, there's her shoulders, a little bit of a bend in that spine. Her hips seemed relatively stable to me. This head's in here somewhere. All right, I can feel that beautiful, there's that V of that rib cage if I wanted to. I can feel this beautiful relationship. A little bit of flatness right here. Again, noticing that sharp degree of an angle where the ankle moves in to support and balance the body. A little bit more. All right, Siri. Okay, let's do one more, and then I want to show you guys some other cool tidbits that I think about with hard line, just kind of separate issues. But let's do a nice crunched one. Yes. Okay, so her spine is very foreshortened, but that's okay, because it's still where I want to think. Thinking of that pelvic region. For me, these shoulders, nice and steady. So shoulders, spine, hips. But see, that's a little off. I feel it moving a little more this way. This gets tucked back in. This is, this is a great hard line exercise for this knee because it's kind of wonky. Let me show you this hard line leg once I get it, and you'll see. Yeah, I'll do this whole thing, and then I'll show you what I discovered with this hard line. The arm is moving in this direction. When you simplify figures, it's easier to assess where you went wrong, right? Like this needed to be more severe. I can see that because I'm not boggled down with details. Those angles are very important. The angles of a line and the degree of a line. I think the hard line exercise is great for when you're trying to draw bent knees. When you're trying to draw bent knees, because there's a lot of straights as it moves over musculature. You can see our ischium bones. If you guys have ever fallen on your butt and really hurt your butt, you probably nailed your ischium, the bottom butterfly wing of your pelvic bone. Or you landed right on your coccyx, your actual old tailbone. All right. Okay, Siri, why don't you take a little break? So you guys, you can see I can really identify and describe a lot just with hard lines off the get-go. Yeah, probably.
So can I go 5 minutes?
Yeah, take a long break. Yeah, I'm going to talk about just a couple things, some more specific things that I routinely use hard line with. Again, I was talking about that bent knee.
Hey, Alex, did you get the emergency alert?
I didn't.
Oh, okay, well, this area might flash flood. Just letting you know.
I was out this morning digging a trench.
Okay.
Yeah. Right after our meeting, guys, I saw rain coming down and I had to go dig a trench or my studio might have flooded. But now we're here. Well, hopefully everything will be okay. I dug a pretty deep trench. All right, so as far as the hard line goes, I mentioned I always think about it with certain things. I think about it with hands. Hands are very helpful. I think about it with feet. And I think about it in the neck region a whole lot. You guys may have seen me draw before, but let's just say we know this guy, right? Our little head. I always think, and you probably remember this from sculpture when we were doing our busts, but I always think of the oatmeal-like shape of the neck. It's related to our first vertebrae, or excuse me, our rib. You won't believe, but our very first rib goes all the way up there. So that is dictated by that. And then I abbreviate our collarbone, and I think about our trapezius. And then there's deltoids. But this is some hard line that I'm always thinking about. Collarbone to neck to trapezius. Another thing I use with hard line very often is you'll see with feet. I like to think of feet in a planar way. Planar, not plain as in plain Jane, but P-L-A-N-E. So it's helpful. That wasn't very good. But it's helpful when drawing feet. So, that's not the greatest foot. But when you're trying to draw a foot from life, you would be, feet are weird. And breaking it down into a top plane of the foot fits into the ankle like a little stirrup. But breaking the foot down into the top plane and a side plane is very helpful. Let me see if I can do that. I just drew this. I don't know why I'm really drawing it again, but this is helpful. Square, break it down. And then again, I just drew this on that little skeleton, but the hand. When you're drawing hands, I'm always looking for this rectangle of the palm, our metacarpals. So narrower at the wrist, a little flare. And I do look for what I tell my students, this Nike symbol. So it's a down up, so the swoop, the Nike swoosh. So there's an up and a down quality. And then if you want to simplify, you can even do that, but you'll notice all of our you want to get more detailed, but you can really do a lot of foundation work with hands and feet in this hard line exercise. Again, always look for neck to clavicle, and hands and feet are really, really good for this. So take some time looking at figures, looking at animals, even trees, and try and identify those hard line movements, thinking about a skeletal system and then moving outwards. It is very helpful when it comes to drawing the figure from life. All right, well, I hope that thoroughly covers it. It's 12:47. So we've got a little bit of time for a longer drawing. So I'm going to get set up for our long drawing here, and I'm going to show you guys how I think about hard line in one of the steps of my drawing process. So I'm just going to let this record. Maybe I can just turn the camera off, but I'm just going to let this record while I'm getting set up for the drawing, okay? All righty. Dang, you guys, I am just reading this warning, and it did just say life-threatening. It looks pretty dry over here. I might ask Siri how comfortable she feels being out and about right now. We did just get a flash flood warning that was quite serious. So let me see about that, you guys. Wow, I just read that, Siri. It sounds like it's kind of serious.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I guess it was serious, but
Are
I mean,
you-
I live like 10 minutes from here, so like I am not worried. I don't know where you live, so whatever you think.
I feel okay if you feel okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Let's do our job. And just give me a second here, we'll take a little minute to set up.
I'm very much like of the sort, if there's a natural disaster, if there's something more interesting to do at home, then I'll go home. But like, that's not.
I understand. No, I know what you mean. Yeah. The rain. The rain gets me down. I like it every day, every once in a while.
But it's not.
I'm a sun girl.
Yeah.
For sure. I'm always outside, that's why. I always am outside, and I feel like the rain deters some of my chins sometimes. So, see, this is going to be a standing pose. Let me get you your awesome staff. Got this one here. And this is going to be very simple. So, if you will, it's like a dancing step we're about to do. Your feet are together. Take your right foot 45 degrees. Take a step forward. But put most of your weight on that hip. And then step. So unrelaxed on hip, step in that hand. But it's like you're stepping forward.
Okay, am I like resting like this, or am I like?
You're resting. I want you to feel like strong, but you're also settling into a very feminine way of standing. Like I'm looking over the field. That's my block.
Okay.
All right, try and put a little bit more weight on your back leg. It's like you're just, this leg is totally loose. Is that comfortable? Perfect, that's perfect. Okay, now if I can just. Perfect, beautiful. Okay, so that's how it feels, that's the pose. We'll get you back into it. You can relax in the line, just getting everything set up. But simple. Easy peasy.
You want the leg? Yeah. You want the leg?
Oh yeah, I'll readjust the leg in just a second.
Really surprised at how stable this thing is. Is it meant for people to stand up? Oh.
Yeah, I don't know where it's come from, but it's been here as long as I have. And it's from what I gather, it's a pretty expensive model. It does have the statement for the balance. Maybe Jay in the other room, but see those two poles?
Yeah.
That's where the balance is. I like that bar, I hope it's not done. I put you guys over here. You got a big old shadow. So that'll be good. When I'm stepping back, you can see what I'm drawing, and you can see Siri. And I'll pull this up periodically for demo. So it's more important to see my paper than Siri, but when I step back from time to time, you'll be able to get a sense of what it is I'm looking at. Okay. So again, you guys, this is the phase where I was saying you can let this play in the background while you're working on your exercises, folding laundry, making lunch, whatever. I'm going to be drawing and talking. You can also fast forward and watch these steps. However you guys are getting the most out of these videos. All right. So here, I would like, so for that leg to be facing me, so your single leg, switch. I want this. So it's like your torso and your hip is facing me and you're facing that other hip away. Perfect. Okay, now just take that whole pose and twist it just a little, feet too. Perfect. Okay. Now kind of put your one shoulder that's not something that if that feels natural, that's beautiful. Perfect. Excellent. Strong, fierce shepherd woman. Perfect. And because this is standing, we'll definitely do 20 to start and see how that feels. If whenever you need to shift your hips around, that's totally fine. With a standing pose, there's going to be a lot more movement, so, and I'm prepared for that. All right, and it is 12:57. Okay, ready, set, go. Oh, the light. How's that in your eyes, Siri? Okay, excellent. So this standing pose is a great pose to think about our hard line exercise. And I will when I'm trying to nail down some correctness. But I'm still going to start with my gesture. I'm still going to start trying to find those lyrical movements. Right? But I'm blocking off where I want my head and my feet to be. Very nice. Diagonal on both the hips. See, you can feel shift in shoulders, shift in hips. Great opportunity to study the medial line. Always taking a big step back just to check on my progress. All right, and you guys can see some hard lines. Some curves, but still mostly hard lines. You can see a beautiful contour on her thigh where shadow is breaking. Great. Identifying my light and dark shapes. I'm still keeping things very simple, even though there's some really beautiful contours that I'm super tempted to work on. I'm still trying to keep things simple while I work out big movements. Take a step back always. Some hard line while I'm trying to work out her deltoid. And this line I'm making is the edge of space right there, just to keep myself oriented. See how her sports bra relates to her medial line? Using some hard line to just go and to work on that outer edge. I'll pull it up for you guys in just a second. I almost made it all the way around. Five more minutes, is that feeling okay, Siri? All right. Hard lines to describe form. You can see I'm using it to describe the mitten of the hand and just get some structure on those feet. All right. Now you guys see I probably have 3 values, 3 or 4, maybe 5 values. I'm gonna go and do a little cleanup around the edges now, okay? Just a little cleanup around the edges so I can start locking my shapes in place. Actually, maybe before I do that, I'll work with Siri before she goes on her break. Let's do a couple more edges. Okay, I'll show you guys. Let me zoom in again. Siri's on a little break. Just did some more. I'm working on that hand. You can see how helpful hardline is for the hand, trying to get those little fingers articulated over the pole. Way on down. So starting to kind of observe some more curvy lines, but you all saw I really started with hard lines. The flip-flop, I'm always thinking about the flip-flop with a foot. Thinking even early on about where her feet are in relation to the picture plane and the ground. See, now I'm going to clean up some of that dark atmosphere and get everything nice and toned while she's on a break. Right? No, 2:30. We're done at 2:30. 2:30. Okay. I'm gonna work with some pastels today, you guys. Just because I think we got a really fun, easy to digest lighting situation. I think with some pastels I can get pretty far. With an hour left. So your hips look good and actually perfect. Excellent. Right where you are. One pump. All right, you guys. So there's a lot of removing and adding again. But just a little cleanup, going back in. This way, this way. Looking for those big, simple shapes. I'm a little tired of drawing the mask, so I'm going to invent series face for this drawing. At least for mouth and nose. I spent a lot of time drawing series face before though, so I've got some idea for features locked in. And we'll do that too. We're going to do a portrait at some point. Remember, you guys, we're going to get started on our own self-portrait from the mirror. So if not next week, probably the week after, I'll be doing a portrait demo with Siri and you guys, which I'm sure you guys will be interested in. Everybody wants to get better with drawing the face, and it's understandable. Our main means of communication, our main means of nonverbal communication. Yes, Siri, that hip will probably tire out on you or get uncomfortable, so whenever you need to shift, just go ahead and shift your weight. These standing poses are really great, a whole lot of fun. And you know, it's totally something you can do from the mirror, actually. Imagine this hand is you drawing on an easel or something, and you're looking in the mirror, right? Like you could totally do a standing pose like this from the mirror, and then this arm would just be what you're drawing with. I'm looking at myself, I'm drawing, looking, drawing, right? Could really do a lot. And if you want to get better with the figure, I definitely recommend getting comfortable using yourself as a reference. You know, you might not always have models. If you want to do figurative work, you have to figure out how to be resourceful. If you want to do this kind of figure work, it is. I'm not quite sure about the length of that hand. I think it is maybe a bit long. I'm not going to flesh it out too much until I resolve some other issues. I think that's an important technique, or not technique so much as something to keep in mind. Things that require a lot of artistic time, drawing hands, drawing faces, drawing feet. I save for a little bit towards the end, or at least just try not to get too nitpicky with those specific things in the beginning, because you put in a lot of effort to draw them, and oftentimes you have to move them. Sometimes you have to move them. So I'm still working in very clear value shapes. If you guys have been watching any online tutorials, I'm still in the blocking in phase. I'm trying to keep things simple and get these big shapes right. That hard line exercise we just did is helping me a whole lot. So now I'm just bringing in some of this white pastel into areas that are getting hit with light. You can see I'm getting a lot of simple but accurate form with just a gray. I mean, yeah, probably 5, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 values. Very, very simple values. A lot of this technical stuff I'm doing is being considerate of my edges. We do talk about edges a lot in this class. And I'm trying to get rid of edges that feel like outlines and not edges. So I don't want my drawing to ever feel illustrative. I don't want it to feel like I drew something and then colored it in. You can usually see me trying to remove evidence of that on the side of flesh that's in light. So, I can keep this stronger edge, and you can see maybe even a dark edge in reality on this dark side. But on the light side, I'm trying to remove any sort of outlines that are flattening out my form instead of rounding, the light hitting the rounded form and rounding away. So always be conscious of your edges. And, once you start mastering edges, you'll notice some are really sharp, some are really soft. You can start to really play with space with your viewer by how concrete some of your edges are. Questions? All right, zoom you guys in. Very simple, looking a little bit like those Poussin ink drawings. feet. Great idea of a shifted collarbone and a shifted hip. Ooh, sorry, hope this isn't making you all dizzy. Jesus Christ. Ah. There we go. Okay. All right, so we'll have one more session after this to finish up this drawing here. One more quick session after this. And I'll pull it in for another final look for you guys. When working with white pastel, I think it's easier to kind of make things more white and then work in some darker material. Like when you're mixing colors, you know, you want to start with the lighter color so you don't accidentally add too much of the darker color. This is, you can solve this problem even easier with paint, right? Instead of using a white, I could find like a nice medium color to represent the light side of Ceres flesh. We'll talk about mixing flesh tones when it comes to figure painting. But it's just a trial and error with your primary colors. For me, I usually mix all of my skin tones from a limited primary color palette. But if you were to, you know, start out with a lighter brown and a darker brown, and then, you know, a gray, just to symbolize this, you know, chalkboard. Ceres standing in front of a chalkboard right now, but whatever space, whatever model space, it's even easier to start separating your figure from your environment. Last one.
This is the first time I'm asking anybody, so.
I understand. I know. I usually, like, we never do a standing pose for the long drawing, but for this hard line exercise, I do usually do standing poses, just so we can see contrapposto very easily. But it's not easy. Everybody, you know now, but modeling is not, it's not a walk in the park. Oh. And up here on her head, you guys, I'm just roughing in those features of the skull, our frontal bone, our maxilla, our mandible, and then getting some kind of zygomatic arch with these eye sockets here. Remember, they're the eye sockets, not the head, so. So I'm getting a little into that phase where I'm getting like a little preoccupied with value transitions and blending and stuff, but I'm not trying to get too, I certainly don't have enough time in 20 minutes to get everywhere on something super highly rendered in the way I would want. So I'm still trying to work very broadly and not let one area get too resolved and leave any other areas kind of in the dust. I don't mind drawings to be not, you know, rendered precisely all the time, but I do like them to be considered pretty fully. Not fully rendered or realized, but considered fully. So I'm just using my blending stomp here, again, not for any fine modeling, but just to sort of massage, work my charcoal into this textured paper. Do not let that edge. There we go. A lot of drawing from life is losing and rediscovering your edges. Perfect. I like to work, if I get to it, that phase, I like to work with the texture of the paper. Reminds me of, I don't know, little granules of light or something. When I can work with kind of a textured paper. You guys have been doing some pastel work, I know, because I've seen it in my figure class. I think pastels are a great dry medium to work with the figure. They're very movable, just like paint. But in the end, you guys need to find whatever medium is most helpful for y'all to express yourselves. It doesn't have to be one medium. much time do we have left? Nice little highlight on her rib cage, that V that we were looking at earlier in this session. Why don't you take a little break, Sarah? Just take a little break, maybe we can do 10 minutes or more, 10-minute one. A lot of times you'll see I'm working on that edge with not the subject value or color, but in fact the negative space color. How you feeling, Siri? Okay? Yeah, we'll just do a really quick one.
I don't know if this is me aging.
Huh?
Maybe it's me aging, but I've started to realize that the way I walk, I kind of like lean into my lower back, you know?
Oh, totally. Just you wait, dear. Just you wait. I did something weird to my neck this morning, and I'm like, oh, I can't exactly turn my head. This is going to be fun. But yeah, you'll notice you're sinking in and getting shorter and shorter every year, too. Not yet, but I think my grandma shrunk a good 3 inches there in the end. My grandma
It's
was...
so weird when you get taller than your grandma, and then you get taller than your mom.
I know. And they're all like, what happened? Yeah. My grandma's like under 5 foot, so it was always very funny to give her a hug. Hi, Grandma.
Are you Russian?
I'm Polish and Hungarian. Staska is a Hungarian name. That's my dad's side, and then I'm Irish and Scotch on my mom's. I do get Russian a lot, though.
Which is pretty Slavic.
Yeah, you don't find a KO a lot around these parts. My grandma's brother, I think, had almost every letter of the alphabet in his name. He was Aloysius Palashevsky.
Oh, Aloysius.
Uh-huh.
Like Alyosha? It's not like Alyosha at all, it's just worked in my brain.
Kind of, yeah. He used to go by Lou. Aloysius. I always loved that name.
Yeah, that's a great name.
He was so handsome. He died in the war. I used to always pass by his picture and be like, oh, he was so handsome.
In the Second World War?
Yeah, I think he was just 18 or 19, my grandma said. I'm very new to this country, or my family is anyway, at least on that side. My mom was adopted, so they don't know much about the Scotch and Spanish, or Scotch and Irish side, but Eastern European side is, I think, just 3 generations. Oh, too much. So you guys, I'm just enjoying these last few minutes that I have with Siri. I'm kind of just working on some value transitions. This is still looking a little more, this is looking a little more illustrative, a little too outliney for my usual liking, but I'm, doing the best I can, like all of you guys should be. And again, I'm working from life, so I have to figure out all these value transitions for myself. And also work with kind of the technical difficulties of the material. Again, this is a great precursor to painting, which is why we work with this material, working on that push-pull. My figure feels a little unbalanced, a little to me. And it seems like maybe that deltoid needs to go further out. There's something about, and I can see these rhythms with hard lines when I'm looking at this. I want, so her hip is jutting out because most of that weight is on that one leg. So it feels like there should be an opposite force moving back this direction. So this is where she's balanced on her hips that we've been looking at. There's the higher hip and lower hip, right? I got this movement, but something about her, if you guys are ever drawing figures and they feel like tipsy-turvy, check your medial line, check your whatever dominant leg you're working from. And then look at these opposite forces. So this shoulder is moving in an opposite direction. Oh, wow, amazing. Just that one little movement of her shoulder going back, for me, balanced this point to this point over that medial line. And I think that's another great aspect of drawing this way, is it gives you the opportunity to really figure stuff like this out and just continue to make stronger and stronger drawings. I also wish this relaxed arm was a little bit more graceful in my drawing. Let's see. What will I do? Move this down a little. Oh, good. So I'm trying to move this edge and I'm grabbing a background value. Oh, so much nicer. Now there's a little kind of relaxed quality with that arm in that hip. Oh, the sun. The sun is coming back out. Hooray. Last minute with Siri. Let's double check everything. This one line, and I think we'll call it a day. Could work on that hand down there, of course, some more, but I've got, for the level of rendering that's taken place in this drawing, I've got enough information from Siri. I can get that hand on at another point if I needed to. Last thing. Good luck. That's what we're missing. Alrighty, Siri. I think that'll do it. Thank you very much. All right, let me show you guys real quick. This is my final long drawing from the model for the day. I'm sorry about when I do this. Okay, there we go. So, again, you can work from yourself for this this exercise in this long drawing. I think it's really good. You can work from whatever subject you have access to at home readily. Yourself, of course, but maybe some of you guys want to start drawing some of your peers, pets, plants, etc. I'll zoom in. You can see how hard line has helped me articulate feet. Some of these angles, important angles. All right. Okay, you guys, that concludes our 4th session with Siri. So again, to recap, gesture, silhouette, contour, hard line. That's what we've covered so far. I hope to see like sketches in your sketchbooks, in your Dropboxes here soon. We will presume our regular schedule next week with Tuesday filming, and I will see you guys all then. Bye. Have a great weekend. Stay safe in this hurricane.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye, y'all.